Hello, everybody.
Hi, Grace.
Hello, hello.
We're so excited to be here, everyone. We have a great night of amazing authors for you. Grace, how are you doing?
I am fantastic because we have a crazy, amazing lineup. Lainey, how
Yeah.
are you?
I'm good. We just got back from ALA. We're feeling good. I lost my voice because I was talking so much. It's finally almost back. And so I think that's a good indication of how great of a time we had. But yeah, we're excited to be here with our I was gonna say annual, that's not right. Our monthly author chat. I feel like we will have to get going soon, but I just want to say thank you for being here. And what do I've like tell our winners what they've won. What do they get when they're part of our Crowdcast series?
So, for those watching on Crowdcast, when you register, you will receive an email from us in advance of the program with the available e-galleys for our featured authors that month. If the e-galleys aren't available yet, we keep an eye out. We'll update it when we can. But yeah, so it's a perk if you are on Crowdcast. You get e-galleys early. Feel free to read them ahead of time and get questions ready. I know some people like to, read them after just to get excited. So yeah, we are so happy that you are all here, getting hellos in the chat. Hi, everybody. Hello, hello. Um, Lainey,
Yeah,
I'm just so excited. I feel like we should just jump right
just
in.
get right in. Alrighty. So tonight we have a great lineup. Like we said, we have Gregory Maguire, author of Galinda, out September 29th. We have Laleh Khadivi, author of Female Life on Planet Earth, out September 22nd. We have Victoria Aveyard, author of Tempest, out September 8th. We have Deesha Philyaw, author of The True Confessions of First Lady Freeman, out September 29th. So we have an all September group. So you know what that means. Library Reads votes are due August 1st. I'm just saying. So throwing that out there. And all of our September authors are gonna tell us all about their books very soon. And I have to say, these are four of my favorite books that we have this year. So I'm too stunned to speak. I'm so excited to be here. And I think we're not gonna pause. We're gonna get going. So without further ado, I want to invite Gregory Maguire on screen. I'm gonna do a bio. Gregory, hi. Oh, the mute. Yeah, it will do it automatically for you. Yeah, there you go.
Okay.
Hi.
Hello there. Sorry about that little glitch. It's rare that I can be silenced by anybody, but if
You're
anybody can
totally
do it,
fine.
technology can do it.
You're totally fine. We're so honored to have you here. And I'm gonna read a bio and then we're gonna turn over to you to hear about the new book, okay? So, Gregory Maguire is the #1 New York Times bestselling author of The Wicked Years, a series that includes Wicked, the beloved classic that is the basis for the blockbuster Tony Award-winning Broadway musical of the same name and the major motion pictures, Son of a Witch, A Lion Among Men, and Out of Oz. His series included in The Wicked Years. His series Another Day continues the story of Oz with the Brides of Maricor, the Oracle of Maricor, and the Witch of Maricor. And his other novels include A Wild Winter Swan, Hidden Sea, After Alice, Confessions of an Ugly Stepsister, Lost, and Mirror Mirror. Some of his novels for children include Cress, excuse me, Cress Watercress, Leaping Beauty, and Egg and Spoon, winner of the Boston Globe Horn Book Award honor. He lives in New England and France, and we can't wait to hear more about Galinda out in September. So tell us more.
Well, first, thank you so much for inviting me. And I've had the privilege of speaking before the cameras started rolling, as it were, with three of the four authors who are, or two of the three. Wait, one, two, three, two of three authors with whom I'm speaking today, and I already can't wait. I want to shut up and hear what Deesha and Victoria have to say, and I'm sure uh, Laleh as well when she comes on. Uh, I am delighted to talk to you a little bit about Galinda. Galinda is a companion volume, not just to my original novel, Wicked, which was published 31 years ago, which is hard to believe. Um, but it's a companion volume to my novel called Elfie, which is the childhood of the Wicked Witch of the West. before she shows up at Shiz University, the way she's famously known to have originated in my novel and also in the Broadway play and in the movies with Cynthia Erivo. Um, in order to talk about Galinda, I have to talk just for a second about Alfie because a number of people said to me, somewhat flatteringly and somewhat dismissively, "Oh boy, you're sure milking that cash cow, aren't you? Going back to the well once again. Haven't you had enough of it? Haven't we all had enough of it?" And in fact, one of the reasons that I wrote Elfie, and I began it about 3 years ago, before the movies came out, is that when I had originally written Wicked and submitted it to HarperCollins in 1994, it was about 50 pages longer than the novel, the long novel that Harper eventually published. My editor at Regan Books, Judith Regan, said, "Honey, you gotta cut it down. It's just too long." And it's hard to cut down a long novel that's intended to be slightly difficult but very rewarding if you can stick with it. In the end, I decided I had to take out sections about her childhood because while I knew how they affected her development, my editor thought it slowed things up. We needed to see the collision of Elphaba and Galinda at college sooner than we were seeing it. So the scenes from Elfie's childhood got put on the cutting room floor 31 years ago, and there they remained. There they would remain for all time, as far as I was concerned, except that this little Broadway thing happened 24 years ago, and the play, well, 23 years ago, the play brought millions of new readers to my books, and millions of people to the theater. And then the movies have done the same thing. And I realized that the intellectual property, if you want to call it that, of my version of Oz long ago escaped my evil clutches and is roaming free across the planet and is going to outlive me by quite some time. That's all well and good. Isn't that what we want? To make something that people like. But sooner or later, I thought somebody else is going to write The Secret Childhood of Elphaba because they don't know what it is, and it wasn't in the original novel. I decided they can revise whatever they want when I'm dead, in the same way that I revised L. Frank Baum and Margaret Hamilton when they were dead. But while I'm alive, I have a right to say what I know about Elphaba's childhood and how she got to be the person she was in Wicked. I did that. It came out last year, I think, and I thought I was done. I really did think I was done. And then people said, "Oh, but we love Galinda too. Can't you give us a companion volume?" So what Galinda is another portrait of the figure we know from Kristen Chenoweth and from Ariana Grande, if we are approaching her from the entertainment perspective, and many, many other wonderful actresses too, like Megan Hilty and just about anybody who's big has played either Elphaba or Galinda for the last 25 years. And so I wanted to take the child Galinda, who is much less confident in herself than she appears when she shows up at college. And I wanted to show what she had been up against and the reasons she had established a campaign to get herself out of the family mess in which she was growing up and into a different arena where she could, in fact, prove herself. If you've seen the play of Wicked, there's a scene where Elphaba and Galinda approach the wizard for the first time. And the wizard says, "I'll do what you want, but first you have to prove yourself." And Galinda, very comically, says to Elphaba, "Go ahead, prove yourself, prove yourself." Well, that's all well and good, but Galinda has to prove herself too. We all have to prove ourselves. It doesn't matter where we stand in the pecking order. It's our job to assert who we are, to prove ourselves to ourselves and to the world that we're confronting. So that's my effort in Galinda, to show how Galinda comes to the realization that it is her job to prove herself. Whether she's timid about it when she gets to college or not, that's another story. But in childhood, Her job is to survive it, as all of our childhoods were, to survive them. That was our jobs. So that's what you'll find in Galinda. I'd like to think it's an easier read than a lot of my books. It's shorter, chapters are shorter, and it really sticks in the head of Galinda almost entirely. I think maybe there's one other character, her brother, she's the narrative voice sometimes goes to. Um, but I hope you like it. It's going to be a fun novel, and it is its own self. It actually could be read as a standalone book, even if you were in some part of the universe that never heard of Wicked. And that's what we all want, right? That a book can stand on its own ruby slippers.
Yeah, no, that's so great. And I'm so glad you said that. If you haven't read the previous books, you can dive in with this one. And I think and I have to say the dedication really made me smile because it's tell them who it's to.
The book is dedicated, I'm not sure if I can do it verbatim, but it's to Kristen Chenoweth and to Ariana Grande
Yeah.
and to all the scintillant Glindas,
Yeah.
past and to come.
Oh, it's so sweet. Wicked was my first Broadway show, so
Oh,
very close
wow.
to my heart. And I loved just kind of because and in some ways in the second movie, I think you do kind of see her a little bit more, but the first one, you're like, what are you going from in your past, and seeing how she grew up, you're like, oh, I get why you are this way. I get it.
Yeah.
But I actually kind of, in a way, saw a little Anne Shirley in her, like she's got this kind of like dreamy whatever, and then all of this
Yeah.
reality is crashing down on her. And I just, not to read your own words back to you, but I loved when it said, um, she's like going to sleep and it says, life is so normal and so weird, thought Glinda. This is like the classiest thought she's ever had. She made believe she was smart and went to sleep in ruckled sheets, pillow upon that satisfaction. And that gave me Anne Shirley vibes. So she's my favorite. That's a high compliment. But I love seeing that. I love seeing kids create wonder and keeping wonder even though the world
Yeah.
is rough sometimes.
Well, it's really one of the reasons I have written for children and about children my entire career, because I love the miracle that kids make themselves up. Sure, they come in a package with, like the Tinker Toy box that you drop on the floor and then you build something. But we build ourselves, and even the frailest of us decides who we want to be, who we might be, and how we can be that person. And I just love that. I think it's one of the great successes of the species that children can do that. And I'm endlessly admiring of their energy and imagination about it.
Oh, that's beautiful. Thank you. Thank you for sharing more about the book, and we will see you soon. So I'm going to put you in the
Yep.
we'll be in the virtual green room. So
I'll
thank
go
you.
behind the curtain.
Behind, why didn't I think of that? Perfect.
If I can find out how. Wait, there it is. Okay.
Yeah.
Bye.
Bye. Thank you. Okay, I'm gonna hand it over to Grace for no, I'm not. It's gonna still be me, but I'm so excited to be here. Okay, I'm gonna go. I'm gonna talk to Victoria Aveyard. Come on down. Okay, hello.
Hi. Okay, I got it all turned off properly. Great.
Looks great, sounds great. We're all here. You know what? I've been that way too. In meetings, you're like, how many times I've turned this mute off? I do it.
Yes.
Well, thank you, Victoria, for being here. I'm so excited to talk to you. And here's your beautiful cover of your book.
I know. I've been so lucky with my covers. Every single time I'm like, this is the time that karma's gonna hit me right in the face, and every single time they knock it out of the park.
It's stunning. I can't wait to see it in person. Obviously, I haven't yet, but I'm gonna.
I know. I haven't seen I've seen the front of the hardcover, just the print, but I haven't seen the whole package with the sprayed edges and everything.
It's gonna be gorgeous. That blue is just okay, so I'm gonna read a bio. Sorry, I got ahead of myself
No
talking about
worries.
this beautiful cover. Okay, so Victoria Aveyard is the #1 New York Times bestselling author of the Red Queen series and the Realm Breaker trilogy. Her books have been translated into over 40 languages and counting. Born and raised in a small town in Western Massachusetts, she now lives in Los Angeles with her dog and her husband. And I have pretty much been telling anyone I have run into how much I love Tempest, coming out in September. So I hand it over to you. Tell us more.
Thank you. And thank you so much. Sometimes listening to your bio, there's a moment of you're like, where is this coming from? And what year is this bio from? But that was beautiful. And it's always like slightly embarrassing too, but in a good way. But thank you guys so much for having me. I think I speak for almost every author when I say like we love talking to librarians. This is such a cool thing for us. And you guys, I was such a public library kid growing up. My parents are retired public school teachers, so I got brought to the public library quite a lot in my time. And you're especially just so vital right now. We were just talking about this before the stream, but I think a lot of people just don't know how many resources they have at their public libraries. And I remember when I was a kid, like besides going to check out books, I would check out puppets and take them home, and I would get like a new puppet for the week. And it was my mom's way of like, you get a new toy, but we're not actually paying for it because that's one of the things the library has. And then later on in middle school and high school, I would go to the public library after school and I would write my fan fiction on those library computers. And it was just such a huge part of my journey, not just as a reader, but as an author. And now knowing that I have some books on the shelves in libraries, it's a very cool full circle moment. But hi guys, I'm Victoria Aveyard, and like you heard, I'm the author of previous books like the Red Queen series, the Realmbreaker trilogy, and my previous novels up until now have all been young adult fantasy and very much centered on young women trying to sort of break out of their circumstances in extraordinary worlds. Red Queen was very firmly young adult fantasy. Realmbreaker was somewhat of a crossover with a mix of YA and adult characters. And now, 8 novels later, and something like 11 years after debuting with Red Queen, I am kind of a debut author all over again with Tempest, which is my first adult novel. The only difference now is I know what to be afraid of, and I sort of know what to worry about with debuting. So this might actually be harder than debuting the first time, but we'll see. We'll see. So naturally, I get a lot of questions about like, why are you moving from young adult to adult? And sort of simply put, besides, pace and scope and maybe the choices in language, YA for me is very much about young characters who are figuring out who they are in the world and kind of choosing who they're going to be. So, moving into the adult space, it was really a delight for me to have these characters who were very firmly people who knew who they were and were now surviving with the choices of what they have done to become who they are. And that's very much what Tempest is. It's besides sort of being my love letter to Pirates of the Caribbean, to like swashbuckling and adventure and romance on the high seas. But the core of it is the woman at the heart of the story. Her name is Kat, who we follow through 10 years of her life as she kind of survives, then thrives, and then has to survive again in this world determined to keep her trapped in what it should be to be a woman of that time. And I sort of approached that character with the intention to draw about as sharp and realistic of a portrait as I could. My original archetype when I was first noodling with the story was, Elizabeth Swann if she was a stone cold bitch. And I really wanted to play with a female character, a female main character who chooses herself first, who is selfish, who is ruthless, and who is hopefully like totally understandable, if not justified in her choices that she's making and that we're following her through. Um, I know I'm preaching to the choir here when I say that female characters are judged far more harshly than male characters, but I was really interested to see how far I could push that in Tempest. Maybe a few too many people have told me that my other female characters are a little too unlikable, and I just thought, like, okay, I'll show you unlikable if that's what you want. Um, I also got to explore one of my sort of favorite subjects, which is worlds in flux, the spaces in between, the spaces where something like piracy would thrive, where people kind of outside the bounds of society can find themselves with new opportunities that they never thought possible. One world ending, another world beginning. What does that look like? I got to invent a place that was very much inspired by the Caribbean of 1718 while also extrapolating and building on it in my own way. And of course, I was really excited and also quite nervous to write what I think is my most romantic book yet. I am a reader who really loves a strong romantic subplot intertwined with like a roaring fantasy adventure. That for me, the tension, the yearning, like slow burn, that is where I live as a reader. And that's what I strive to write as well. Like that really pleases me. But now that I'm here talking about this book, I guess I should probably give you the log line. Well, I've told you all about it. So basically, Tempest is about a world inspired by the golden age of piracy, where a fallen noblewoman is given a terrible choice. She's either going to help the Empire track down the last great pirate captain plaguing the seas, who happens to be the only man she's ever loved, or she's going to be executed. Um, and that to have a woman put in that position where you really don't know where she's going, but she's always going to choose herself first, I just had a blast. And this story strangely came to me kind of fully formed. It was sort of like Athena jumping out of Zeus's head. I was working on another proposal for a different adult book entirely, and I went for a walk because I was stuck. And when I get stuck on things, I go for walks. And I was listening to the Pirates of the Caribbean soundtrack. And I had pulled a pirate subplot out of that book I was working on because I knew, like, actually, there's something bigger here. I think this is its own book. And that idea, that little nugget, kept kind of tapping me on the shoulder. So I went for the walk and I put on the Pirates of the Caribbean soundtrack and I thought, let's just think about that one for a second. And about 45 minutes later of me just power walking up and down the streets of my neighborhood with my dog kind of dragging along behind me, like, what are you doing? I had this almost complete outline of Tempest fully blown in my head with the characters, with the world, with the entire plot. And I went back to my house. I sat down at my computer. I wrote out essentially a one sheet of what that book was. And I sent it to my agent with the one sheet of what I was already working on that she knew about. And I was like, listen, this might sound crazy, but I actually just had this idea right now. Which way do you think I should go? And both my agent and her assistant immediately emailed back and were like, you need to write the pirate book. So I'm hoping they were right. But that was sort of the validation I needed when subconsciously I kind of knew like this, no nautical puns intended, but this is the way the wind was blowing me. And I did set out to write a standalone, but my editors received a 300,000 word book, and they were absolutely correct in saying, Victoria, this is two books. So once we turned in that first draft and I got all those notes, and while on one side we were talking production wise, hey, printing a book this long, there's actually quite a lot of obstacles there and obstacles we're not going to be able to climb. But my editors were also saying, I actually wanted more of these scenes or more of this character or more of this moment. And that was simply not something I could do in a book that was already that long. So breaking it in half was the right choice, but it was quite a challenge because I never want a reader to read a book and feel like they're missing something. Even when you're writing a series, you want them to be little arcs within the bigger arc of the story. And so that was quite a challenge to kind of unbraid things, especially because the way Tempest is written structurally is every chapter is back and forth in the timeline. So we have Cat and the world 10 years ago, Cat and the world in the present, 10 years ago, present, 10 years ago, present, and those timelines start connecting. So when I had to break the story apart and figure out where am I breaking the story, I have to make the beats still match. I have to make sure the timelines still line up. There was a lot of headaches and a lot of screaming at Microsoft Word every time you tried to move a chapter. That was no good. But I definitely had more room to move, more room to develop the characters and let them breathe. And it's almost validating when something was a tough choice, but in hindsight, it was the right choice. And that's where I'm at right now. I'm in the second round of edits on book 2 on Tyrant. And I can already see how much better the first book is, hopefully, that's coming out in a couple months because I can't touch it anymore. But that second book should be coming out in, I think they're targeting early summer. So that'll be the fastest release of 2 books I will ever have had in my career. But I guess the secret is just write 2 books by accident. Who knew?
Thank you. Well, don't
Yeah.
worry, your editor is well aware of me in their inbox. I'm
I
like, you
believe.
can just send it whenever.
Yeah.
And they're like, I hear you, Lainey. Yes. I'm like, okay, okay, okay. So thank you. Whoever told
Yeah.
you to write the pirate book, congrats. We'll send them
I'll
letters. This
let
is
Susie
great.
know. She was right
Yeah.
on the money.
This is great. Oh, no, I what you were saying about you want this fast-paced adventure, but there's so much tension, and I feel like
Mhm.
that's an art form in itself. It's just slow build, and I have to say, not often do I say for multi-timeline books that I'm like, I love them both equally, but
Mm.
this one I really did. And I couldn't
Yeah.
decide where, like, I was like, oh, I have to go, oh, but I love this one too. Oh, I gotta go back, but I love this one too.
I know. That's how I
So
pull you. I'm very
you
manipulative. I just want you
do.
turning the page. I
You
just want you buying the next
do.
book.
But what I really appreciate about this book is that you do see her in the past, but you see a woman who has been through things.
Hmm.
She's experienced like, this imperialism, that's this whole other kind of plot. And then you have political upheaval and rebellion, and she has to literally in the first chapter face what she's done. She's walking down the street. So I thought that that was so interesting because sometimes you're like, yeah, but you're so new in this world. This was someone who's lived it. And I thought it was so well done. And I saw a story or a post you had put about having to cut like unnecessary trade route info because it was interesting to you. Did you research a lot of that stuff?
Yeah, so I was lucky enough. I almost feel like, how Adam Sandler makes movies, just places he wants to go on vacation.
Yeah.
I got to go on a research trip to the Bahamas for this book.
Oh
And
no.
they,
How
I highly
terrible.
recommend, but it was really incredible because there's still so many forts that are there, and there are some amazing guides and amazing museums, and that was incredibly helpful to me. Not just from, going through museums, taking pictures of exhibits, but being able to stand on like the gun battery of a fort that was there at the time that I'm drawing from and
Yeah.
feel what that sunlight on your face feels like what the air feels like and the humidity. That was so important to me. And I felt really, really proud because of an author friend of mine who had read it. She's like, I'm from South Florida, and I want you to know you really nailed storm season and humidity and how sweaty everyone is. But I also got very lucky in that I had a European tour in the fall when I was finishing up one of the final edits, and I ran into quite a lot of maritime and naval museums, and that was really important for emphasizing or influencing how I wrote the colonial empires and sort of the horrific things they were doing and how they operated and why they weren't necessarily as equipped to do what they were doing as they could be. There were a lot of little moments of inspiration where I'm like, oh, that's how they made their maps. No wonder their maps sucked. And how are we going to pull this into the story? So all of that was really, really helpful.
Yeah, no, it really shows.
Yeah.
Shows.
The
Yeah.
other thing with writing pirate books is an audience has so many connotations and sort of legends and myths and things that we think we are true about piracy that don't actually jive with the realism. And as a writer, you're trying to sort of honor those expectations while also giving sort of a glimpse of maybe not the entire realism because it would be too much to kind of jump them out of the story, but you're
Mhm.
trying to find that balance between the truth and the expectation from an audience who has so many other pirate stories that they're drawing on. So like they
Yeah.
didn't walk the plank. That wasn't something they did. They had another way that they would execute people, which I got to put in the second book and is much better, I think.
Yeah, I mean, there's a lot of conversation that he's like, no, like, don't romanticize this. Like, a pirate's
Right.
life is really hard,
Yes. Yes.
Fascinating. Well, thank you so much.
Thank
We will
you.
see you back in just a minute,
Okay,
and I'm gonna
great.
hand it off to Grace.
Okay.
Hey, I'm very excited to welcome Deesha Philyaw to our program. Hello.
It says I can't open my
Oh,
video.
wait,
Oh,
no.
there it is. All right.
There we go.
Hi.
Hello. Thank you so much for being here. I'm so
Thanks.
excited to see you again.
Thanks for having me.
We were just in Chicago at ALA,
Yes.
where we had this really great. I just want to point this out because I feel like when it's on screen, it's hard to see. But this beautiful cover, that's a painting.
Yes.
Can you believe that? It looks like a photograph. It's so great. Um,
Yes.
so I'm gonna read your bio before we get started.
Okay.
Deesha Philyaw's debut short story collection, The Secret Lives of Church Ladies, won the Penn Faulkner Award for Fiction. the Story Prize, the LA Times Book Prize, the Art Seidenbaum Award for First Fiction, and was a finalist for the National Book Award for Fiction. Deesha is a Kimbilio Fiction Fellow, a Baldwin for the Arts Fellow, a United States Arts Fellow, and a co-host of 2 podcasts, Ursa Short Fiction and Reckon True Stories. She is currently at work developing a TV show based on her short fiction. So Deesha, thank you so much for being here. Lainey and I have had so much fun reading this book, talking about it, and we're just really excited for everyone to hear from you because you were fantastic at the tea at ALA. So I'm going to let you take it away and tell everybody about the true confessions of First Lady Freeman.
All right. Thank you, Grace. And my apologies. I'm pulling up some notes here. I am sort of used to doing this, talking about the book. And then I thought about the fact that I was just at ALA at the tea, talking to the librarians about being a library kid, and then thinking about tonight and saying, some of the same people are going to be there. So I should probably say something else. So what I came up with are some fun facts about First Lady Freeman. But first, I'll tell you, for those who are not familiar with the book, in the True Confessions of First Lady Freeman, our funny and feisty heroine, Cherise Freeman, is on the verge of winning a pageant for middle-aged megachurch pastors' wives, first ladies, when a sensational scandal breaks out involving secrets from her past and another contestant's husband. So in the end, though, Cherise realizes that her life needed to be ruined so that it could get real. So now I'll share with you 5 fun facts about First Lady Freeman. Number 1, in the Black evangelical church, the pastor's wife is called the First Lady. And my novel, which was 20 years in the making, has had several incarnations, including one titled Dear Michelle, in which the main character, Char, for short, for Cherise, is a huge fan of our forever First Lady, Michelle Obama. Char is so much of a fan that she writes a secret, sexy, anonymous epistolary blog consisting exclusively of letters to Mrs. Obama. In these letters, Cherise complains about her husband, the pastor, and his life as her life, as a first lady, which she finds to be charmed but dull. Fun fact number 2. The Dear Michelle version of my novel was one of several attempts to breathe some life into it. I stalled in the writing of this book many times until I realized that Char was too much like me, and that was the problem. I would hate being a first lady married to a pastor, especially one 15 years older than me, as Char was. But Char needed room to be herself, to become herself, to hold values and have tastes that differed from mine, to do things I wouldn't do. I was holding her hostage to my ideals, leaving very little room for her to have a compelling story of her own. There was nothing at stake for Char in these early versions of the book, and she needed to want something and to risk losing everything. Which brings me to fun fact number 3. To allow Char to be not me, I had to rewrite her such that she loved being a first lady and reveled in all the trappings of that life and that lifestyle. So I rewrote her to desperately want acceptance from the other first ladies who have rejected her for decades because she's younger and she doesn't come from a respectable churchy background the way they do. Fun fact number 4. In 2020, I took a virtual workshop on satire writing, and that gave me the idea for the First Lady USA pageant, a beauty pageant, which is at the center of the novel. I decided I would lean into the pageantry and the performance of the Black church, particularly as embodied by the physical presence of the First Ladies. So think big church hats, Prada suits, stilettos, all of that. I was going to satirize this world with an actual beauty pageant for middle-aged pastors' wives. Char would compete in the pageant to win and to win over the other ladies in the process. She imagined that it would be just like a friendly little competition, and then finally she would get the acceptance she's always wanted from this very elite group of women. But of course, where's the fun in that? So I couldn't let that happen for her, not easily, which leads me to fun fact number 5. From the very first incarnation of this novel, there was a scandal that upended Char's life. In the earlier versions of the book, the scandal was Char getting doxxed or exposed as the writer behind the Secret Sexy Anonymous blog. In today's social media cycle, she would probably trend for about 24 hours and that would be it. Thankfully, my many, many rewrites led me to a really juicy, complicated jaw dropper of a scandal, which I will not spoil for you tonight. I will close by saying that this novel, for all the hard work, for all those years, decades, for all the balls I had to keep in the air to bring it to fruition, it was also a lot of fun to write. And I hope that you all will have fun reading it. Thank you.
Okay, I love how you structured that. That was amazing with the fun facts. I actually wanted to call out a comment that one of our librarians just made in the chat saying she missed ALA, so she's very happy to be here.
Okay.
And she thanked you for the fun facts. She said they're so helpful when engaging patrons. So thank you for that. And I
Thank you.
love hearing the way this developed. Especially because Shar has this really distinct voice. So I find it so interesting that you had to like really craft that separately from you. But like,
Yeah.
was there a moment or like a bit of dialogue or an image that like hit you where you're like, okay, this is who she is?
Um, I had to build towards that. I did not like her in those early incarnations when she was miserable being a first lady. She was whiny. It was very navel gazing. Um, because there was really nothing happening, and so that voice was not appealing at all. And so to try and figure out how to bring her to life so that she is not me, I went to the first chapter, which has been fairly consistent, probably for the last decade that I was working on the book. And in that, or actually from the very beginning, the first chapter was always her in church, sort of thinking about how she doesn't really believe all of this stuff, this church stuff, and Christianity in particular, and these people in the church are, spending money they don't have, barely able to pay for their rent or their mortgage. To fund her lifestyle because they want to be obedient to a God she's not sure she believes in. And there's a line where she says, I'm kind of over this whole Prada and stiletto steez or something like that. And so when I came back many years later trying to, figure out who she is, I had decided that she loves being a church lady. I was like, okay, so she loves the Prada and stiletto steez. She's a fashionista. She's a brand whore. So I did what a lot of writers do when we are procrastinating. I started doing research. Like, how much could I find out about luxury and mid-luxury clothing and other brands, other types of luxury brands, to create this sort of like wonderland for her where she is always dressed in these brands and she judges everyone else around her based on what they're wearing. And so when she spots her nemesis, the head deaconess, Sheila Battle, she comments that Sheila's wearing a dress from Ross Dress for Less, which is where I shop, by the way. So no shade to Ross Dress for Less. But that's when her voice started to evolve, when she was talking about the brands and then contrasting herself to someone like Sheila. And then I moved her from being in just a church service to pageant night. So she's backstage at the pageant and people are, dressed in different things and she's commenting on that. And then her voice was just off to the races at that point.
I love that. Thank you so much. I'm going to put you in the virtual green room as well, and then
Okay.
we will welcome on Laleh Khadivi.
All right.
Come on camera. Hello. How are
Hello.
you?
Hi.
So good to see you again. It's been like, what, a week and a half?
Yes, I know, but it's good to see a familiar face.
Yes, absolutely. Laleh was also at ALA with us and talked all about female life on planet Earth, which I'm so excited for you all to hear about. But I'm going to read a bio really quick and then we can go into the book. So, Laleh Khadivi is the author of 4 novels, including The Age of Orphans, which received a Winning Writers Award, The Walking, A Good Country, a New York Times Editor's Choice, and Female Life on Planet Earth. Her essays, stories, and criticism have appeared in the New York Times, LA Times, McSweeney's, and Lit Hub, among others. She is the recipient of the National Endowment for the Arts Fellowship, a Pushcart Prize, a Stein Fellowship at Stanford University, and a John Felice Fellowship in Rome. A former documentary filmmaker, she has taught and spoken at universities and literary festivals across the United States, Europe, Australia, and Asia. Born in Estefan, Iran, she works as an associate professor and chair of the MFA in writing program at the University of San Francisco and lives in the Bay Area with her excellent family and 2 very good dogs. So welcome. I'm so
Thank
happy
you.
you're here. And I'm going to give you the virtual stage to tell everybody about female life on planet Earth.
Thank you, Grace. And I feel in such intimidating company. I am super excited about all the books that have been described today. And like Deesha, I had the similar thought of, oh, many of these people might have heard kind of the conversation we had at ALA and wanted to differentiate a little bit. But I do have to just take a moment to talk about how much libraries have been a sanctuary in my life, because as I sit here right now, I feel like the doors are being invaded by my children and the dogs are barking and who knows what's happening in the kitchen. And the library was just like the most professional place I could go to. Ever since I was a girl, it made me feel like the contents of my mind were valuable. And I think it played a really big part in becoming a writer. So, a little bit about the book. Female Life on Planet Earth is, on the surface, a very simple story of a woman who is mourning the loss of her mother. And her mother dies totally natural causes. There's no foul play. She's of an appropriate age. She had a good life. She dies in her sleep. And the woman, the protagonist, Hetty, doesn't really have a way to begin mourning her. And I think all of us belong to different cultures, and some cultures have very rigorous mourning routines and traditions. And Hetty comes from a culture like that, but she doesn't want to belong to it anymore. And on the one hand, her aunt is nagging her to do the ceremonial things, to have all the right parties, to serve the right food, to say the right things. And Hetty is resisting. And on the other hand, she gets a package in the mail that has pictures of her mother when Hetty was maybe 3 years old. And in the pictures, her mother is holding a machine gun toward a group of sobbing women. And her mother is also robed in fundamentalist Islamic gowns. And during Hetty's whole life, she had never seen her like that. Her mother worked in a mall. She worked at a jewelry store called Diamonds R Us. She really liked parties. She liked being social. She liked wearing makeup and nice clothes. And the woman in the photo is totally unrecognizable to Hetty. And so, instead of, let's say, mourning, Hetty decides that she's going to go and figure out who exactly her mother was. And the book is an odyssey into discovering this. And just to add another layer to it, it's not the kind of thing where I leave a trail of breadcrumbs and say, oh, this cousin's going to tell you this detail, and this aunt is going to tell you this detail, and then Hetty will do some research and find out this other thing. Hetty is a mess, and she spends the entire year after her mother's death walking around downtown LA and the neighborhood that she lives in and trying to figure out, wait a minute, okay, what can I find out about my mother, but not really wanting to know. She's avoiding what truth may be lurking out there. And in the time she spends avoiding it, she lets herself meet a bunch of different kinds of women and listen to their stories. And so her story gets kind of muted in the background, but we get the stories of her cousin who is a stand-up comedian. We get the stories of a soccer mom who happens to be at a practice her daughter's at. We get the story of a woman who works at a taqueria whose Hetty has known since they were both teenagers together. And in listening to these stories, Hetty is not just finding out about her mom, she's finding out about women. And there's a way in which I wanted to take the singularity of one human life and see how much I could expand it out to bleed into other people's stories and have those stories bleed into that single person's life. I spent the first part of my writing life writing pretty intensely about human migration, about nationalism, about citizenship and tribalism, and they were all books about men. And then when I turned to begin to write about women, I think this book is going to be, I wrote a trilogy about men. I think this is going to be a trilogy about women, and this is the first one. And when I turned to look at what I could sort of think and say about women, I was flooded with stories. I felt like my access to female stories was so much bigger, and I was so much more porous to the stories of women. And so I filled this up with everything that I had heard and everything I had seen and everything I could imagine to be believable, which I hope includes a lot of humor, because having written many serious political books, I was like, this one's going to be funny. And I also set out with a really strange agenda. I live with three men, my husband and two sons, and I was like, I don't want any men in this book. And for many years in the writing of this book, the book was called The Limits of Man, because it showed an expansiveness about the female characters. And I'm glad I changed it to Female Life on Planet Earth, because it includes so much more. But it wasn't hard to write a book with no men in it. I mean, there are incidental men, like Hetty's husband, her next door neighbor, but they're not in any way in the spotlight or in the foreground. And I delighted in the way that I got to build a whole world of people and sort of just have women ping-ponging off of other women as they move through adolescence and middle age and old age. So it was a real joy to write. And I write very short books, or on the shorter side. And I felt like this one could have gone on for much longer.
Oh my God. Well, I'm happy to hear that there are likely more books coming in a trilogy format. That's very exciting, because this was one of those books where you're like, I could keep reading. And it is really such a feat that you've accomplished, like womanhood sitting at the heart of this novel and having these like quiet interior struggles. And you wrote about, the female experience, which is not a monolith, in a way that felt really specific, but also like so universal. And it was just amazing to read. And I'm really excited for librarians to read it. People are saying in the chat, someone says this has book club written all around it. So really excited for
I will say one more thing, just
yeah.
really quickly. I can't do it here because I can't see the audience, but in my recent conversations, I've been really enjoying starting talking about the book by asking the audience, how well do you know your mother? And how well does your mother know you? And just that simple question is so complicated for everybody. So to thinking about that as a framework for kind of understanding how to place the book and how to pass it on to readers.
Oh, that is so phenomenal. So thank you for that. We're gonna welcome everybody back on to I've been using the word virtual, not our virtual stage.
This is so great. I love incidental men. I wrote it down.
Yeah, no, that
Um,
you should put like limited things of men in your back pocket for something, though. That would be great.
Yeah,
That's a
maybe
great
book
title.
two.
yeah. This has been so awesome. It's been so great hearing from everyone. And I just have some great comments. So before we get to questions, I'll read a few. So going back, our friend Donna, librarian Donna, said, Gregory's books have thrilled our readers for 2 generations now. I became a rabid fan when he presented Wicked at the National Book Festival in Washington, D.C. Saw the play with my 5th grader and when it opened. And now we're back every year, and your books bring so much joy. We're happy to have this new story in the world. Let's see. Victoria, they were saying, just how wonderful it is to have their like young adult audience be able to kind of grow up with some books and their teens be so excited, and your research process is really great. And then we like, oh, Deesha, they were like, we saw you at ALA or they didn't, but they were like so excited to hear more either way. And they love this cover. They're like, this is beautiful. They did have a question. Are you going to do more episodes of your podcast with KSA Lehman? We want more, is what they said.
We are hoping to.
Okay.
We are hoping to. Kiese and I love doing it. We love, talking to each other. We just happen to share the conversations with other people. It is something we would do for free. But we have a production team and sound engineers and all of those folks, and they have to get paid. We're not going to ask them to work for free. So until we can figure out the fundraising, we won't have any new ones, but we are really working on making that happen. So thanks to everybody that's, supported us and that listen and pass it on, because a lot of people don't know about the podcast. So we are still getting a lot of listens even now. And it's been a couple of years since we've had new episodes. So thank you. Thank you so much.
Yeah. And Victoria, I was listening some of your clips from Plot Twist, your podcast. Let's put that in there. But I think in that you were recently just talking about like what makes an adult book. So I think that's kind of interesting if you want to, like, do you start off and think this is an adult book, or does it kind of come after you're writing for a bit?
No, I think that the story tells me quite immediately, and
Mm.
that might sound a little woo-woo, but
Mm.
the difference between YA and adult is usually so stark that especially for Tempest, it was immediately like, this is an adult story centered on an adult woman. And you can also break it down to just like age too. I think if you're writing about a character who's older than usually 18, you can quite safely say it's going to be adult. That said, on the industry side of things, the publishing industry side, that gets extra interesting because the YA market is shrinking so rapidly. And a lot of us in the YA space who love the YA space, and I definitely want to be able to come back and forth, are hearing, don't do that. Like stay
Mm.
an adult for a little while. And that's a little odd to hear because I don't ever want to feel like the industry or in trying to, obviously maintain audiences is abandoning an audience and sort of leaving young readers with nowhere to go. And I think that's gonna really hurt us many years down the road because you're not building new readers, especially if you're abandoning, middle grade and young adult. So I'm hoping, unfortunately, publishing follows the audience and it's a capitalist industry. We all know that. I'm hoping somebody can crack it and the pendulum swings a little bit because I don't like seeing people gun shy over YA. I love YA.
Mm. Interesting. Well, we're gonna ask a question for all. I'm just rounding out the comments because we've had so many great, but we also had a comment, Lolly, for the cover. They said your cover has me at full attention. Wowza. So we just had a great collection of covers this time. They stood out such like rich colors. And then I'm gonna hand to Grace because we have a question for everyone.
Yeah, so we have a question from, okay. Wait, where did it go? There we go. A question from Martha asked everybody, what made you want to be a writer? How'd you get started? It's like that's a really big question, but enjoy. Whoever feels moved to start.
I came to it late in life.
Yeah.
I always enjoyed writing, and my teachers always said I was good at writing. And so when I was, I don't know, 29, 30, and I was a stay-at-home mom of a toddler who never napped. And so writing was the thing that I said I was going to do for like 20 minutes a day, just to myself, to use my own brain for something other than caretaking and parenting. And so eventually that 20 minutes a day grew into mom's night out, to mom's weekend away, to mom's going to writing conferences. And I decided that that's the thing I wanted to do. It gave me so much joy, whether it was nonfiction or fiction. I was writing both in the beginning. And then a few years after I got started, I got divorced. And so then I decided, oh, I got to figure out how to make a living at this thing. And so and then that became my focus. And so I just began doing a lot of freelance work, writing and editing and other things. And it was sort of buying time to do my creative writing, which then was primarily fiction, but it's I shouldn't say easier. At that time, I had more opportunities to earn money writing nonfiction. So I was writing parenting essays and doing all sorts of things. And so, and in the background, those 20 years is working on this novel, working on the short stories that became The Secret Lives of Church Ladies. And so I just decided that I don't want to do anything else. I don't. I always say that I'm writing for the love of story, yeah, but also to stay out of academia. Literally, there's like nothing else I want to do. And so this has to work.
Yeah. For me, it's always interesting, in that same vein of like, when did you want to be a writer? It's when did you realize that writing is a career that people
Right.
have? Because, I feel like a lot of us, you write something with a crayon and I'm a storyteller. But the path into writing novels and publishing, it's so murky. You go to this school and you study this thing and then you do this trade and then you work your way up the ladder. So for me, I was so intimidated by the thought of writing novels that I didn't think it was something I could do. I went to school to study screenwriting instead because somehow in my brain I was like, movies and television, that's an easier route into storytelling. And I didn't really come back to the idea of writing actual novels until my senior year of college, and I was interning at a film studio, and they had us reading the self-published lists, looking for, at that time, 50 Shades of Grey had just hit, and Hugh Howey's Wool was generating. This was like 15 years ago, and now Wool is Silo on Apple, so if that tells you how long things take. But I remember we were sort of circling that in the office I was working in, and I was reading these books, and I was like, oh my God, I know how to tell a story like this. I've just done 4 years of screenwriting work, and I know how to tell a screenplay. I know how to write a feature. I know how to structure it. I see how that translates to prose. Maybe this thing that I love reading and I've always loved in the back of my mind, maybe I actually do have the skill to attempt that. And that was sort of my way in, was wait a second, maybe you do know how to do this, and it's still very scary and you have no idea what the path ahead is, but it's not completely out of reach.
Yeah. Wow. And Gregory, correct me if I'm wrong, but was Wicked your adult debut? When have you written your children's books
Pardon me.
before?
Yes, I had written 16 years. I'd written for children,
Mm.
and I was in a state of I was living in England, and I was in a state of what the British so fondly call financial embarrassment. Meaning if I could have been on the breadlines, I would have been. But I want to go back to the question you posed about realizing you were a writer and when you became a writer. There's a line from Stephen Sondheim, the great composer lyricist, from Sunday in the Park with George, toward the bottom of Act One, where Georges Seurat is consoling his ancient mother who's fussing and complaining about how the world is changing. And he says to her, all things are beautiful. Change is beautiful, mother. Don't try to hold on to it. Every change is beautiful. And then there's the line he sings, you watch while I revise the world. And for me, I started revising the world when I was 5 because there were many patches of unhappiness in my childhood and many difficulties, and I did not know that writing was therapy. I did not know that writing was survival. I did know that if I didn't use my imagination, my head was going to explode, and I started at 5 and I've used it every day of my life since. But writing was actually essential to survival for me. I enjoyed it. I nominated myself to be a real person by being a writer, but I did it first before I even knew what it was doing for me.
That's beautiful.
Um, I I'm really resonating with all of these answers. I feel like I also came to it very late in life, and I was a filmmaker first, directing documentary films. And over time, that just gets very expensive and very collaborative. And there's nothing expensive about a notebook and a pencil, except time. Time becomes the thing that costs the most, to be able to sit down and do it. But the question made me think more about not why did I become a writer, which was largely around ideas of having felt very silenced when I was younger and as a, young woman, and then wanting to have a voice. But why do I stay a writer? So I have this feeling when I go into libraries, and especially bookstores. Libraries are more friendly because they're like, books, we love them. And bookstores are like, books, we sell them. And I just feel this overwhelm of story. And I think, well, so many people are doing it. Why do I have to do it? And they're doing great jobs. I love the things that come out. And then it just happens, like you were explaining, Gregory, that a couple of months go by, and if I don't start writing, I go a little bit crazy. I
Yeah.
feel like reality has to come through me and turn into art for me to be sane.
Yeah.
And I look at other people and I'm like, how come that's not your case? Why doesn't that happen to you? Like, how come you just live with reality and you don't have to make art about it? That seems so nice.
Denial.
I just wrote that down, by the way. Reality has to come through me and turn into art. I just wrote that down. That was great. Thank you.
All of these answers are so beautiful. Grace, we were like, I'm gonna tear up. These are just so thoughtful and beautiful. I want to be respectful of everyone's time. Does everyone have 5 or 6 minutes to be okay to go
Yeah.
over? Okay. So we have a couple more questions that I do want to get to. A few have asked about like writing process and things, and I think we've kind of talked about that. There's a really beautiful question from Donna. It says, regardless of genre or time period, each of you address universal themes in your books: motherhood, family, religion, commercialism, female empowerment, actualization. Really beautiful question. So they were just kind of asking about that process and if any of your main characters are based on people in your own lives or experiences, and kind of how you build these rich characters out. I know it's a very big question, but feel free to say what you want.
Something I've learned writing is I really love writing awful men, like despicable, make your toes curl, I hate this person, men. And then maybe kind of giving them their comeuppance. Tempest and Tyrant have some of probably my most disgusting from an emotional stance men, and I was actually quite shocked with myself at how much I enjoyed writing that, and I wonder what that says about me psychologically. But this is definitely a question I always ask when I'm like chairing another author, is what makes one of your books your book? And for me, I feel like the core of everything I write has revolves around sort of female rage and this sort of beating against what we're supposed to be, or the box we're supposed to fit in. And I think that comes through in all my work.
I'm writing constantly about Black church women and girls, even after they have left the church. So it's really sort of the lingering hold that dogma and, religious hypocrisy and religious abuse and gender double standards, how it impacts women and queer folks and anyone that the church decides is on the wrong side of the binaries that the church thrives on. And so I keep returning to those people, those experiences, and what someone else has called the unholy trinity, and how we navigate shame, guilt, and fear, which is what so much, I guess, the foundation of evangelical Christianity.
I'm going to ask if I can speak one more time, and then I've been summoned, so I need to leave shortly. But I want to, looking back at my own work, I think it relates to everything that people are talking about today, including everything that the librarians who are here on the platform do for us. My own work, I look back on it after almost 50 years of being published. It's almost all based on the stories of childhood, from The Wizard of Oz to Grimm fairy tales to Hans Andersen. And I realize what I've done is I've spent my whole life in homage to the writers who saved me. Because to read fantasy when you're young and troubled is to be able to put yourself in a world in which you might not be in so much peril, a world in which you might thrive, a world in which you might actually be able to make a difference. The libraries protected those books for me. They handed them to me, and they are still doing it. And they are going to hand people your books. The writers here, Laleh and Deesha and Victoria, they are going to hand people who need them your books. And God bless you all for doing that. On that note, lovely to meet you. I'm sorry to have to
No, we're wrapping up. Thank you so much, Gregory.
take
Thank
care,
you.
everybody.
Thank you. All right. I think that's a perfect note
Laleh,
to
do you
end
wanna-
on. And
do you
oh,
wanna
sorry.
answer?
Yeah, one. Do you have anything to say about the last question before I?
Oh, I was just going to say one small thing
Yeah.
about character, which Gregory inspired when he was giving that great farewell, which is that I feel like there's two reasons that I approach books as a reader, and they're the same two reasons that I write. And one is that characters, I either read them and I think, oh, wow, this person is nothing like me. And I'm in. I'm like, let's be here with this person who I don't recognize. Or I open the book and I read something. I'm like, wow, this person's a lot like me. And then I'm in for that too. And I feel like I go to the page with the same kind of back and forth to write into the unknown and also to kind of like tap into what I do know and put that on the page too.
Oh, I just want to say this is a really beautiful and inspiring episode. I mean, all of them are great, but this one, oh,
Thank
get
you.
me emotional.
I know.
Thank you.
I know. Everyone's, oh, I know. And somebody was saying actually, they were like, I want Hetty's mother's book too. So I mean, there's just so much to dive into in
Oh,
these
yeah.
characters and
That's a good idea. I will take a note.
Write that down.
love it. I love it. Thank you so much. I'm gonna just quickly show the books again. I feel like we could have been here for another 3 hours, so thank you for staying on a couple of minutes.
Take a picture.
Because we have lots of questions. But we have enjoyed hearing from you and hearing about your books. We have Galinda out September 29th, Female Life on Planet Earth out September 22nd. We have Tempest out September 8th, The True Confessions of First Lady Freeman out September 29th. And like I said, all are available to vote on for Library Reads due August 1st. So that's all I'm going to say. Thank you so much, all of our authors here. Like, this was really fantastic, and we couldn't have asked for a better hour and change. So, thank you.
Thank you,
Thank
everybody.
you.
Thanks so
This was
much.
great. Thank you.
Thank you. Bye.
Bye.